Sergeant and Mrs. Smith, you're going to love this house.
Is that a tub in the kitchen?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
Suffering from earbud-related discomfort and low-quality audio? Try the new Galaxy Buds 3 from Samsung. Now you can listen in comfort throughout your day with a redesigned fit and start hearing all your favorite sounds crystal clear, from your morning workout playlist to your evening podcast. Possible side effects include smiles, happiness, better concentration, and more energy during workouts. Some listeners also experience closer relationships with loved ones due to improved call quality. Visit Samsung.com or ask your local retailer if Galaxy Buds 3 are right for you.
I can imagine Egyptians being like, this is an unusual number of frogs.
This feels excessive.
Yeah,
this feels excessive.
Did you leave the fridge open? Because we have...
Honey, what are you making? Because there's frogs.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dan McClellan.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And you are listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast, where we increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion and combat the spread of misinformation about the same. How go things today, Dan?
Things go great. It's a beautiful day, and I just got back from a trip. I went and saw my mom in Canada, so that was
nice.
That was nice. Hi, Mom.
And swung by our nation's capital, or at least adjacent to our nation's capital, to attend a podcast convention.
Yeah, I took pictures of the Capitol, but I was in Virginia, I was in Maryland, I was never in D.C. I don't think I was ever officially in D.C. Is Reagan in D.C.? I don't know.
No, I think it's in Virginia.
I think it's in Virginia.
Yeah.
So I don't think I quite ever made it into D.C. I flew over, though.
Yeah.
Good views. You fly out into and out of Reagan, you get good views.
Oh, it's such a gorgeous area. I love the East Coast, and particularly around the D.C. area. I grew up just on the other side of D.C. from where you were.
Oh, right.
A place called Gaithersburg or North Potomac. I think the name changed while I was living there, but I haven't been back there since we left in July of 1993.
Whoa!
And so it's been 30 years since I've been back to the old stomping grounds. At some point, I'm going to get out there.
Yeah, you should. All right, well, we got a show to do, so let's do that show. We got a couple things we're going to do. We're going to do a chapter and verse, and I'm kind of excited about it because today is Plague Day.
Plague Day.
We're gonna do the Exodus plagues, and then
Don't skip Plague Day.
Never. That's right. That's important. You don't want skinny plagues.
Nope.
And then we're going to talk about the Shroud of Turin. That's also very exciting and topical. I don't know. It shouldn't be topical, but it has reared its head again.
Yes.
And has suddenly started to come back with a vengeance. So.
And in an untimely way. And I'll explain why. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah.
Fair enough.
You reminded me. My wife and I try to go to a gym nearby whenever we can, which turns into like twice a month, some months. And then, we go twice a week, other months. And we brought my 12-year-old daughter a couple of times last month. And it was so funny. After the first day, we get back in the car and my 12-year-old daughter knows nothing about gym culture, knows nothing about all this stuff. It's like, how come there are so many guys that are just gigantic with tiny little skinny legs? And I laughed for hours. It was so funny to me.
Yeah, next take her to a cycling event, and she'll be able to comment on all the guys with enormous legs and tiny little upper bodies.
Yep. That's it'd be like that. It do sometimes. So
yes, indeed.
Our chapter and verse.
Let's launch in.
Let's do
chapter and verse. All right, so our first thing, we're in Exodus, and we are going to talk about the plagues. The 10 question. Is it 10?
Well, that's a question.
Plagues of Egypt. Now these are all of you who are like me were raised watching the Cecil B. DeMille 10 Commandments movie every year. you have one idea of the plagues, but if you haven't read through them kind of carefully, it's different. It hits a little different. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what is so different about these plagues, about the experience of reading it and why it's... And Dan, I do need some explanation because there's some stuff that doesn't make any sense to me or is weird or is whatever. So
we'll talk about it.
So what we got, the background is apparently, at least according to this, Egypt has taken all of Israel, the Israelites, into slavery and is holding them in bondage, or in bondage, as Charlton Heston would say. And so it's time. The Lord has decided that Moses and his brother Aaron are going to be freeing them, are going to make them free. And so it's time to do that. Moses is now, so, there's been a bunch of build up to this, but now Moses goes to Pharaoh and he's been prepped for this by the Lord. The Lord has told him what to do.
Well, and oddly, if you go to the beginning of Exodus 7, God is talking to Moses and says, look, I've made you a god to Pharaoh, which is an interesting verse. Just start off with, and your brother will be your prophet. You're going to tell Pharaoh everything that I tell you. And then in verse 3 says, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah, that messed me up.
Yeah.
Like it's not Pharaoh doing it. It's the Lord playing a trick on everybody.
Yeah. And the point is basically, I am going to create drama so that I can manifest my signs and wonders. It's like, you're going to go tell him to do all this stuff. He's not going to listen to you. It's going to be so aggravating. Just you wait and see. And then I'm going to come and do my light show. And then everybody's going to be like, wow, that Adonai, that was something.
And it's not just a light show. Like people, people are going to die.
Yes.
And we're going to find out that like, it's not a small number of people that are going to die. No. So it's rough. It's rough. But the Lord says multiple times throughout the story, this is so that everybody in the world will know how big and powerful I am.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So Moses is like, okay, so I'm basically just doing repetitions here for no reason. This isn't going anywhere, but I got to do it anyway. All right.
Yeah. And it does feel like it's going through the motions, and we'll get to why. The first plague, we can skip the whole, like, Aaron turns his staff into a snake.
Yeah.
And then but what's important about that part of the story is that Pharaoh has his own magicians, presumably who pray to their own gods. And so when Aaron throws his staff down and it turns into a snake, they do the same thing, and their staffs turn into snakes.
Right.
Also.
Well, there are two things to say here. One is that Aaron's serpent then consumes the other magician's serpent. It's basically saying our God's more powerful than your God.
Right.
But there is an acknowledgement in there that those gods are real.
Exactly.
And we talked about this in the previous episode we did on magic, that they just presumed there was magic all over the place. These people were getting away with it. It was real. And here the idea is, these gods are real. They have power, but their power doesn't compare. And then the other thing I was going to say is we don't have the prototypical Hebrew word for snake here.
Oh.
This isn't a snake. Clearly, anyway, it's tanin is the Hebrew word, which is the same word that is used for sea creatures or serpents or perhaps crocodile. So it's not clear exactly what the staff is turning into.
Oh, okay.
It certainly could be a way to refer to a serpent like a snake, but it could be something else as well. But whatever it is, the point is, okay, Egypt, you got your gods, but they're no match for our gods. This is the Harlem Globetrotters playing against the Generals that they used to play?
Washington Generals,
the Washington Generals. And it's just for show
Right.
because they're going to get stomped. And,
but the thing is that they don't get entirely stomped. They kind of, and this is the reason we bring this up is because they kind of match trick for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like they keep trying to replicate the thing, which I think becomes very weird very quickly, and we'll get to that.
Well, in Exodus 12:12, we have the statement that God is executing judgment on all the gods of Egypt. And so the idea is that they're in Egypt. That's not Adonai's territory. Adonai's territory is Canaan. And so Adonai is away from home court. There's no home court advantage for Adonai here, but Adonai is acting as kind of judge, jury, and executioner for the iniquities that are abounding in Egypt, which are attributed to their gods. And so part of the point of this, is to say, your gods have been naughty, and I'm executing judgment on them.
Yeah. So now we come to plague the first, water into blood.
Water into blood.
Now, in the Cecil B. DeMille thing, he touches the water with his staff, and it sort of water.
The Kool-Aid,
the red spreads out and whatever.
Is it a practical or special effect in the DeMille film? Because I never saw it.
I think it's practical. I don't know how, but it's some sort of weird effect. I don't know exactly. I think they probably did it was an effect of some sort. Anyway.
Okay.
In the book, they first do the Nile. They
got
smack
the film version and the book version.
Right, exactly. They first smack that crocodile's cane onto the water, and the entire Nile turns into blood. But that's not it. That's not all. All the waters of Egypt, rivers, canals, ponds, pools, even the stuff in their water jugs, their vessels. They're very, it says the wood vessels and the stone vessels.
Yeah.
All of their water.
Ceramic vessels, they were cool, but wooden stone.
If you were lucky enough to have one of those.
Yeah.
Which is horrifying. And apparently it was stinky. It smelled bad, so that's no good.
Yeah.
And then it says, and this is the first time it says this, but I'm very confused by it. It says Pharaoh's magicians then did the same thing. They managed to pull the same trick off, which is like
with what water?
Yeah, exactly. What you just said all the water was already blood. So
and this is something that's going to come up again later when the livestock like the hail destroys the livestock.
Yeah.
Like it's emphatic. Every last one, all of it, it's all gone. There's none left. Everything. And then 2 verses later, it's like, so there were still some animals left.
Right, exactly. That keeps happening.
Yeah.
So that's tricky.
Well, here's an interesting thing about the plagues, which, by the way, the word plague is used a few times in the story, but they're not as a group referred to as plagues.
Right.
The words that are used to refer to this set of events is signs and wonders.
Oh.
I'm going to show my signs and wonders with these signs and wonders. And so we have come to know them as the plagues, but only a couple of them are actually referred to explicitly as plagues. The rest are signs and wonders.
Point of order.
In
the NRSVUE, it refers to them as plagues plenty, but just in the chapter headings that aren't actually part of the text.
Yeah. Because that's how we traditionally understand them.
Yeah.
But when we look at the first 9, we're going to call the 10th. Now, and this is not like the 10 Commandments where there's a place where it says the 10 plagues or the 10 signs and wonders. It just says these are the signs and wonders. The first 9 of them, they're divided into 3 groups, and in each group, there's a pattern to this. The first 3, the first one, there's a warning. Moses offers a warning outside as Pharaoh is on the way to the river in the morning. The second of each group, there is a warning, but it happens in the palace, and it doesn't tell us when it happens. The third of each group, there's no warning.
Okay.
And so then you get to the 4th plague, and it starts over. There is a warning. It happens outside. It happens in the morning. second group or second plague of the second group. There is a warning, but it's in the palace. Third, there's no warning at all. And so that happens for each of the three groupings of plagues. So there's a literary structure to this that is grouping the three. And the first three have to do with things coming from the ground. We got water, we got frogs, we got gnats. Second three happen to do with things that affect humans, things that affect livestock, and then things that are affecting both humans and livestock. And then the third group are all things that are coming from the sky. So there's an interesting literary structure to this that indicates this is a literary creation. And there are attempts to historicize this, to try to say, oh, well, the inundation, the annual inundation of the Nile causes it to be filled up with all of this dirt, the red dirt, and that makes the water look red like blood.
I remember hearing that.
Right, and then the fish die because there's too much silt in the water, and then the frogs try to escape, and then everything dies, and then the gnats come, and then the flies come to eat the corpses of everything, and that causes pestilence for the animals. And so there's this attempt to try to historicize everything, but the overwhelming consensus among scholars is that this is purely a literary creation.
But the other thing about that attempt to historicize is that it actually detracts from the point of the story, because the point of the story is that it isn't a natural occurrence.
Right,
the
it's a sign
entire
and
point of
wonder.
the story is that it's God making himself, like, if this was a thing that just sort of happened every now and then, like, it totally ruins the story.
Yeah, because then the Egyptians are going to be like, oh yeah, that was totally natural. But
right. Yeah. Oh yeah, we have records of this happening before.
Yeah, but the whole point is for God to show their signs and wonders so that everyone will be in awe of all this that happened.
Right.
So
we'll keep moving through these. You already referenced the next thing is frogs. The frogs come out, and apparently it's so many that it's like in everybody's bedrooms, and it's in their mixing bowls, and it's in their whatever.
I don't know if you've ever lived in a place with lots of frogs.
No, I have not.
When I lived in Bellingham in Washington, I don't know if it was just our apartment complex. We were right by a gigantic field, like we were right by the wilderness, basically. So, but we heard frogs croaking all night long. I loved it, but I can imagine Egyptians being like, "This is an unusual number of frogs.
This feels excessive.
Yeah,
this feels excessive."
Did you leave the fridge open? Because we have. Well, and an interesting
Honey,
thing
what are you making? Because there's frogs.
In the Hebrew, it's just in the noun is in the singular. Frog. Oh. Yeah. And so it's a collective noun.
Okay.
It can be used to and like the word in Hebrew for birds is just singular. And so when it talks about, he created the birds in Genesis 1, it just says bird. So it's collective. But you
don't know, so maybe he only created one bird.
Well, which would mean that there was one gigantic frog that climbed out of the Nile. And there is an ancient Jewish tradition, an interpretive tradition that understands this as
a single
one
frog?
giant frog that wreaked havoc on the kind of a Godzilla-like creature stomping on pyramids and stuff. Yeah,
I am into it. All right, I'll go with that. Hey, everybody, we just wanted to talk quickly about Brickhouse Nutrition's new supplement, Lean. Lean is a weight loss supplement specifically created by doctors to help people lose weight. If you can't afford weekly shots of an expensive drug, but you do need to lose more than 10 pounds, that's what Lean was created for.
I'm looking forward to trying Lean out. I've got some on the way. I've been maintaining a reasonably okay diet for a while now, and I get out and exercise whenever I can, but I am looking forward to adding this as a supplement to see if I can get some of those extra pounds off so that I can fit back into the pants that I really think I look great in.
The ingredients in Lean have been shown to lower your blood sugar, burn fat by converting it to energy, and curb your appetite and cravings. so you're not as hungry.
So let's get you started with 15% off and free rush shipping so you can add lean to your healthy diet and exercise plan. Visit takelean.com and enter Dogma for your discount. That's promo code DOGMA at takelean.com.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
So then Pharaoh, and this happens every single time, the way that each of these pestilences, plagues, whatever, ends is Pharaoh's like, oh my gosh, I've been such a jerk. I apologize. Please make it stop. And then Moses goes, okay, and prays to God, and God makes it stop. The way that he makes the frogs thing stop, by the way, is that they all just instantly die.
Yeah, it's like this is a step backwards.
Yeah, right. Now we have dead frogs. I don't see how that's better. And apparently they do. I was like, that's gonna stink. And then it says in the Bible, and everything stinks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Woo. So there's that. Then there are gnats, and again with the gnats, the magicians try to reproduce the trick. I'm not sure why, but they can't. Yeah. So now we have. So apparently, gnats was a bridge too far for the Egyptian gods.
I see Beetlejuice going, I don't do gnats. I won't do
it. So next we got flies. And this is the first time that he's very clear that the Egyptian people will get flies.
Yeah.
But the Israelite people in Goshen. Now, where it mentions Goshen a bunch of times as the place where the Israelites live.
Yeah.
How close is that to the Egyptians, etc.?
Well, the Egyptians are kind of spread out. But Goshen is a part of the eastern part of the Nile Delta. So if you look at a map and you see it kind of fans out up toward the Mediterranean, Goshen is on the east side of that. Now, depending on where you date these events that didn't happen, you might have the Egyptians being located in different parts of the Nile. But yeah, this is eastern Nile Delta area.
Okay.
All the way
as opposed to, like, are we to imagine that Pharaoh and the Egyptians that keep getting referred to are in the Cairo area, or where are they?
Again, it depends on where you date them, but we're supposed to be understanding them to be nearby. And so during the reign of Ramses, so it moved around a little bit. If you date it in the 1300s or the 1400s, it's going to be in different areas. Pi Ramses is the city that was built as the new capital for Ramses, and that's in the Goshen area. So that's like Eastern Nile Delta region,
and that's a city that is mentioned in the book.
That they built this city when they were enslaved, and also none of this is taking place during a period when they were building pyramids. Mm-hmm. Just in case anybody is trying to find a kind of chronological slot for all of this, pyramids, they stopped building pyramids centuries before any of this happened.
Yeah. So in case you want to apply this fictional story to the pyramids and imagine the Israelites building those, alas, no.
Yes, alas. Indeed not.
Yeah. Okay. And also, one of the ways that we know, this is presumed, we have talked on this show about how the Exodus as a thing is presumed to either be based on a true story, but like so loosely that none of this actually applies to it.
Yeah.
Or just made up from whole cloth.
Yeah.
Because there's no archaeological evidence or records of any kind that support any of this except this story in the Bible.
Right. There's some people sometimes will point to the Ipuwer papyrus as because it's talks about blood. It talks about the poor stealing from the rich. It talks about all this stuff that people try to squeeze into the round hole of the Exodus tradition. But in addition to the fact that most scholars think the story in the Ipuwer papyrus dates to several hundred years prior, it doesn't fit. It's talking about societal collapse. It's talking about invasion from the outside to exploit the weakness of the society, and it's talking about the inversion of all of the social hierarchy. And so that people will point to that, but yeah, for the most part, there's not a place to fit this.
It does feel very much like the Egyptians might have written about all of these plagues happening to them. You know, remember that time when everything went horribly for us and then we lost 2 million of our of our labor force?
And they would have attributed it, like people are like, oh, they're not going to write about, you know, they only wrote about their wins. It's like, no, they wrote about their L's, but they just either said these people were mean to us, or they will spin it into a W. So yeah, there would have been something about all of this happening, since this would have fundamentally overturned their entire social infrastructure and way of life and everything. That this could not have escaped some kind of indication in the material and in the literary record, and we find nothing. We find pretty smooth transition in literature. The material remains, the reigns, the succession of rulers. It's all pretty smooth, apart from your regular intermediary periods, which you have from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them not writing, not recording things about gnats and flies. The next one is flies, or even frogs, but like, all of the water turning to blood, that seems like it'd get written about. And then after flies, it's the livestock one. And what that one is hardcore. That one is all of the livestock. And it, like you said, it's very clear that it says all of the Egyptian livestock, including horses, donkeys, camels, herds, and flocks. And then only this is what was funny. So they all die. Only the Egyptian livestock dies, not the Israelite livestock.
Yeah.
Which made me go, well, won't the Egyptians just go and take the Israelites' livestock? Like they're the slave owners. They would be the ones who could. Anyway. But yes, all of their livestock dies. Then all the Egyptians get festering boils on their humans and their animals, which, what animals? Their livestock is dead.
Yeah.
And then what I wrote down is thunder hail. because
thunder. Oh, I probably can't sing that.
You're not Thundercats, thunder hail.
Thunder hail. Oh.
And I'm just going to quote, this is chapter 9, Exodus chapter 9. This is verses 15 and 16. Okay. It says, indeed, by now I could have stretched out my hand. I could have stretched out my hand and struck your people, and struck you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been cut off from the earth. But this is why I have let you live, to show you my power and to make my name resound through all the earth. Which, again, like when we were talking about,
even though you're not supposed to say God's name.
Okay, fair. That's a fair point.
Or but also, this story came before that prohibition.
Right. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But also, again, this story is contained in one place only. So if the point of this was to make Adonai's name resound through all the earth, it didn't work. It resounded through their culture for a long time, but yeah.
Well, and you even have the practice of Passover is explicitly intended to facilitate the remembrance of these events.
Right.
yeah, this is something that we see a lot. These signs and wonders are intended so that people will know that I am Adonai, or so that my name will be known. And we don't find much remembrance in the historical record beyond what is in the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
In fact, we can, when you look at the Jewish settlement, at the Jewish garrison at Elephantine in Egypt, there are some passing references to the celebration of something that sounds like the Passover, but they never talk anything about this story. But yeah, it's. And then you've got the additional idea that when God sets their hand to recover all of the lost tribes and bring everybody back and effect this grand restoration, it's going to make the story of God leading the Israelites out of Egypt look pale in comparison. I can't think of a funny comparison to make. But your vast trove of pop culture references has failed you. Yep.
All right. So the thunder hail comes, and the thunder hail destroys not just so. And this is where it says you better bring in all that livestock from the fields, or it's going to be killed by the hail. Which is funny because you literally just killed the livestock.
Yep.
And this is where the hail destroys all the crops and, quote, shatters the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's literally no food sources for presumably millions of people. Am I right? Like, if there's no livestock, the fish are all dead. The crops are all dead.
Mm-hmm.
That feels bad.
This is pretty scorched earth.
Yeah.
There's nothing to keep the Egyptians alive at this point, except for all the stuff that is down the street in the land of Goshen,
right?
All of the Israelites are hanging out.
And Pharaoh again promises that he's going to let everybody go. He pinky swears, he double dog dares them to please get God to stop raining fire hail on them. By the way, there's fire in the hail. I don't know how that's the case. And so Moses says, "Hey God, let up." And then Pharaoh's heart gets hardened yet again because we still have more things we got to do. Now we got locusts, which by this point, who cares about locusts? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like after all of this stuff, it's like, oh, bugs again? Okay, fine.
Oh, bugs we can eat this time?
Right?
Darn.
Thank you. Yeah, but the bugs eat all of the remaining crops, which I guess the stalks on the ground or whatever. So
yeah.
And then a wind blows them all into the Red Sea. With and you can help me with this one, a footnote that says, or Sea of Reeds.
The Red Sea is a misnomer. And it probably comes from the fact that in ancient Greek, they referred to this as the Red Sea. That's not what it says in the Hebrew. Yam Suf means Sea of Reeds. And so in the Greek, some people think red, they use like colors for cardinal directions. And so some people think that this was like the sea to the south or something like that. But there's just this name Red Sea from Greek, and so we have taken to calling it the Red Sea after the Greek. But in Hebrew, in the Hebrew Bible here, it's Yam Suf.
Okay, so, but we assume that's referring to the same sea.
Yeah, most people are pretty sure it's the same sea. There's some people who think, it's a different sea. But yeah, most people agree it's the same one.
Okay. And the Sea of Reeds was also what Moses ends up parting later on. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Ninth plague is 3 days of darkness, which would be annoying. That would be a problem.
Yeah, well, it's not like they're living in northern Alaska.
Right.
It's like 6 months of darkness.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and then we get to the grand finale, which is, you referred to Passover before. This is the Great Plague. This is Israelites mark their doors with sheep's blood, and everybody else, the firstborn of their household, is killed, and not just people, the firstborn of their livestock, which there is no more livestock. But even then, if you happened to get a livestock back, now the firstborn of your livestock is also killed.
Get a livestock back. You went into to the store and said, "Give me a livestock.
I need. All of my livestock were killed. I need at least one. Give me a livestock." So
and there's an interesting thing. We haven't really talked about the Akedah on the show. Have we talked about the sacrifice of Isaac?
I don't know. Oh, we need to. I don't know if we have.
Because there's an interesting thing going on here. One of the things that some scholars think the sacrifice of Isaac, that story is doing, is something that this story might be doing as well. It might be coming up with an explanation for why we seem to have this command to sacrifice the firstborn child. Because in the end of after this story, there's going to be this idea that I killed all the firstborn children and the firstborn livestock of Egypt, and so now in remembrance of that, you're supposed to sacrifice your firstborn, but not really. You're actually supposed to redeem them, and then the firstborn of your livestock you're also supposed to sacrifice, except for certain among them you're supposed to redeem them as well. And so for some folks, this is an attempt to create kind of a narrative background, an etiology for this weird part of Exodus that says sacrifice your firstborn children. So that might be going on in the background here. It's woven in pretty intricately if that is the case. But yeah, the idea is that the death of this lamb, and in Genesis 21 and 22, there's a ram that gets sacrificed in place of Isaac. Here, the lamb gets sacrificed as a replacement for the firstborn. So in that sense, it's reflecting things from other parts of the Pentateuch.
All right. Well, there you go. That's there's some plagues for you. A little bit of plague talk for anyone who wanted it. It's a crazy story. It is. That would not be a fun time. And also, I don't feel like Adonai comes off great. In this whole story, in all of the Exodus story, Adonai is the one who he's his own antagonist. He's the one that keeps hardening the heart of Pharaoh. Yeah. He's the one that keeps making, like you said, he's just causing drama.
Mm-hmm. And you see this in a few different places. And even that, one of the other explanations for that commandment to sacrifice the firstborn child, what we see in Ezekiel 20, verses 25 and 26, Ezekiel's like, yeah, you guys were just so stubborn and hard-hearted. God was like, you want to sacrifice something? I'll give you something to sacrifice. Sacrifice your firstborn children. And Ezekiel represents the point as he just wants to show you who's boss, and he just wants to decimate you basically and punish you. And so there is kind of a vindictive streak in a lot of the traditions regarding Adonai and Adonai's desire to show off, to make sure everybody knows their name, and by intentionally hardening somebody's heart. So a lot of the free will folks, when they get into this part of the Bible, are finding themselves having to engage in all kinds of mental gymnastics to make this fit the notion that God respects free will. Because here, God's like, ooh, you know what? I got an idea. I'm going to put on a show. And to do it, I need to kill a bunch of people, and I need to ensure that Pharaoh does not undermine my drama.
Yeah. Yeah, because one plague could have been plenty.
Yeah.
I mean, that first plague, the water into blood, that should have been more than enough.
Yeah. Pharaoh could have been like, oh, you're serious. Okay, cool. Yeah, go,
damn,
do your thing.
I really liked that water, so
bad.
Off you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. We invented a new category of our segments for this one. We're going to call this one Artifacts and Fiction. So there is an artifact. There is a thing. We know that it exists.
It is a thing.
And that is the Shroud of Turin.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just as a description, so that, I mean, most people probably know what it is, but just so that, just quickly, we are talking about a long piece of fabric, sort of kind of a burlappy sort of weave.
Yeah,
I think that has in it an image that looks like a bearded man in with like sort of a ruddy red color.
So it's pretty faded. It's really, really long, and if it's a really long rectangular piece of cloth with some holes in it. But if you folded it in half, then you have the front and the back of image of this person.
Right.
And it's supposed to be the shroud that was used to bury Jesus.
Supposed to be. I think you mean it was the shroud in which Jesus was buried, because a whole bunch of TikTokers have been saying lately that that's exactly what it is, and we know it for a fact.
Yes, it has been reported recently that scientists have confirmed the authenticity of the shroud. Now, by the time this episode comes out, I don't know how dead this story will be, but at the moment, there have been several days of prominent social media personalities.
It's going to be going strong. So refer people to this episode as needed.
How do stop losses work on Kraken? Let's say I have a birthday party on Wednesday night, but an important meeting Thursday morning. So Sensible Me pre-books a taxi for 10 p.m. with alerts. Voila! I won't be getting carried away and staying out till 2. That's stop loss orders on Kraken, an easy way to plan ahead. Go to Kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Interactive Inc., PWI, DBA Kraken. View PWI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
Other realtors have vacant homes. At Pest Properties, ours come occupied and ready to invest. Looking to relocate your larvae? Try the Petrie Residence. This rustic home features thousands of crevices to squirm in through, vaulted ceilings for our wall crawlers, and an outdoor bird bath teeming with mosquito eggs. So kick up your 6 hairy legs and sign today.
Before pests move in, Terminix it. With over 95 years of experience, we'll help keep your home off the pest market. Visit Terminix.com today.
So there a lot of reporting that scientists have confirmed this through new tests. But I just want to briefly cover the origins of the Shroud of Turin, because the first time it pops up in the historical record is in 1356 in a town in France, where our first records of it are all rejections of its authenticity. People saying, hey, there's somebody going around with this fake relic, trying to pass it off as real. In fact, a bishop of this town in France in 1389 wrote to Pope Clement VII, saying that this thing has been a part of a faith healing scam in which people were hired to pretend to be sick. And then once the shroud was brought to them, or they were brought to the shroud, they would suddenly pop up and, hey, I can walk again. And they have they have been healed. And according to this letter that was written to Pope Clement VII, after thorough investigation, they found the artist who created it, and he admitted to having painted it.
What?
1389. So a mere 33 years after the first ever reference to the Shroud of Turin, we have people saying, yeah, it's a fake. We know who faked it. They admitted faking it.
Oh, wow.
However, it makes its way to Turin, where it has become cemented in the lore.
Turin is Torino, Italy.
Yeah. So there have been tests run on this thing for years. And in 2019 and then again in 2022, there were a team of Italian scientists who published a couple of papers in an open access journal called Heritage. And the 2019 paper was called X-ray Dating of Ancient Linen Fabrics. And then the 2022 paper was called X-ray dating of a Turin shroud's linen sample. And they're engaged in something called wide-angle X-ray scattering, which is...
that sounds very sciencey.
It is very sciencey, but it is new sciencey. It is something that has not been... These are the first actual publications of attempts to use this to date fabric. And so it is an innovative means of testing, and it has not been well established. It's just these two papers. And what they're suggesting is, look, we got some fabric that was found at Masada. So we can date very securely this fabric to the 1st century CE. Okay. And then we're doing this wide angle X-ray scattering analysis on that fabric and then this fabric and other pieces of fabric. And we're going to try to basically calibrate this way of testing it. And they claim that the results from the Shroud of Turin are consistent with 2,000-year-old fabric. Although, and here's the part that baffles me, they suggest that the results only work if the shroud has been kept in an environment with a temperature that averages between 68 and 72.5 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. Which
is not the Eastern Mediterranean.
Right.
You get degrees much lower than that, particularly during the night. And during the day and during certain periods of the year, temperatures much, much higher than that.
Right.
And so there are going to be criticisms of these papers. But it's these papers that people are suddenly, in the year of our Lord 2024, becoming aware of and saying, new science just dropped that has proven that it is authentic, when it's really just this claim that, hey, this new kind of testing could suggest it's 2,000 years old.
Even if that testing was 100% accurate, the most that it would be capable of doing is telling us that is telling us a date for that fabric.
Potentially.
That still doesn't get us anywhere near this was definitely the thing that Jesus himself was buried in.
And there are a bunch of problems with even that, because this fabric is a particular kind of weave, a herringbone weave, that requires a specific kind of loom. Unless you're doing it by hand, running a little shuttle back and forth by hand, which is not something that they did 2,000 years ago for long pieces of fabric. This particular weave was not done.
Yeah.
And that particular type of loom was not existing 2,000 years ago. It was very common in the 14th century, though. And
are you denying the miracle of the loomed weave fabric?
I am suggesting that the data do not support the antiquity of this. And there are a bunch of other things. I saw the Daily Mail posted a video, scientists have come to a chilling discovery. And then 2 days later, they did another video. It was like, scientists have arrived at another chilling discovery. And then they shared this they said scientists looked at the blood stains that were evidently on the fabric, and they determined that they had, the owner of that blood had suffered from severe trauma, had been tortured. And
how do you determine that from the blood?
Well, they suggested there were certain chemicals and things like that the blood reacted a certain way that usually happens when there is some kind of torture going on.
Just like a high amount of cortisol or something.
Something like that. And what the Daily Mail piece forgot to go look up was the fact that this was a paper that was published in 2017 and was retracted by the journal that published it shortly thereafter. The editors commented, concerns have been raised that the data presented in this article are not sufficient to support the conclusions drawn. The provenance, integrity, and availability of the material used for the study have also been questioned. And then they go on to say that they are concerned that there are not sufficient controls to support conclusions referring to human blood or physical trauma, blah, 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 blah. Thus, we consider the main conclusions of the article are not sufficiently supported. So those scientists who published that study in 2017, most of those are the same scientists who published the studies in 2019 and 2022.
And here we are shocked. Yes. I tell you.
Indeed. So the chilling discovery is actually just a chilling misrepresentation of the science.
Yeah.
Now,
it's so weird to me because even if all of the nonsense that has been presented about this turned out to be true, it's still not evidence of what they're claiming it's evidence of.
Yeah.
Like it's you know, if you can find that. I mean, I did a TikTok live fairly recently, and someone, you know, I was chatting with somebody, and she was a very sweet person, but was like this. They even tested the blood, and it was the same blood type as Jesus. And I said, how do you know what Jesus's blood type is? Where is that? Somewhere buried in Matthew? It's like, and lo, the Lord was O negative. What are we talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, there's an awful lot that is riding on faith, which is an interesting part of this, because you have what do they call them? Oh, I don't think they call them authenticists, but they have some of the scientists who work on this kind of stuff, they have a label for the folks who are dogmatically committed to the authenticity of the shroud. And like one of the people who worked on one of those studies from 2019, 2022, and 2017, like claimed in an interview that they had personal revelation in the 90s while they were standing in front of the shroud that it was authentic. And it's like you can't reason with that level of commitment to that dogma. You cannot reason with them.
Nor should you. I mean, like at that point, just admit that this is a faith belief.
Right.
And don't worry about proving it. Just keep believing it.
Yeah. And then in 1988, there was radiocarbon testing done on, they took a patch from or I don't want to say patch because I'll get to the reason why, but they took a piece of the shroud and they divided it up into a bunch of different pieces and sent it away to 3 different laboratories for radiocarbon dating. And this was all blind. None of the laboratories knew what the other laboratories were doing. They all come up with roughly the same result. This dates to the mid-1200s to the late 1300s CE.
Okay.
When was the first time that anyone ever mentioned the Shroud of Turin? In the mid-1300s CE. So medieval production.
Right.
And immediately afterwards, of course, you have a bunch of people crying foul that they did it all wrong, and that, and there was one person who published a study suggesting that the radiocarbon dating had actually come from a patch that had been sewn into the shroud that was of medieval production.
Okay.
But if you go read the 1988 paper where they talk about the radiocarbon dating, they're like, we took this piece from just this part of the shroud that was not near any patches.
Right.
And the claim is that this was a patch that was so expertly woven into the shroud that it is impossible to detect with the naked eye.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an invisible patch.
Right.
But it's of medieval production, unlike the rest of the shroud. And but then there have been studies done more recently than that have said, no, we've re-looked at all of this stuff, and the argument that they're using for how this can be a patch doesn't fit the data. So you're going to have back and forth until the Earth crashes into the sun or the sun engulfs the Earth, whichever happens first. There's going to be back and forth about this because this is a matter of dogma. Mm-hmm. This is not a matter of critical thinking or rational thought for some folks.
Which, I mean, the thing that miffs me, I guess, about things like this is that if they just leave it in the realm of this is a dogma that we believe, that's one thing. But when they themselves are like, we are going to venture into the realm of scientific evidence, we're going to try to prove this to be true scientifically, and then they refuse to acknowledge what the science actually says, that's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Don't come into somebody else's garden and then claim that it's not what it is. If you're going to venture into that realm, you have to acknowledge what you discover.
And that's where the cries of persecution ring hollow. It's like if you're going to start talking about scientific data, and you're going to start trying to prove all of this stuff, you're going to be criticized for it because you are in another person. You're in the realm of scientific inquiry. There's another scientist, Luigi Garlascelli, I think his name is pronounced. He and some other scientists have done a few different analyses on this. They looked at the blood, so there's supposed to be some blood stains on the shroud. Showed that tested how blood would drip and flow with the arms in various orientations, and showed that whoever this was here, that blood could not have flowed the way it did with them laying down. They had to have been standing upright for that blood to flow the way they did. And they also pointed out there is blood that is like flowing on top of hair. And they're like, blood does not flow over hair. If you have an injured scalp, the blood just mats the
soaks
hair.
In and
But when you look at the shroud, you see curly little rivulets of blood flowing across the top of hair. So it is very clearly a product of the 14th century or maybe the late 13th century, an artistic work. We have the testimony of the folks from that time period.
The thing that almost nobody is talking about, I never see anybody say this, maybe they do, and I just haven't heard it, I just haven't come across it, is that it's not very well rendered. It doesn't, like, proportionally, it doesn't look correct for a human face.
Correct.
It's not the right proportions for a person.
Right. And it's the head is too small for the body.
Right.
It shows the feet laying flat.
Oh.
Not upright, laying flat, which you cannot do without at least a 90-degree bend in your knees, which is not what happened. And there are so many other problems with it. Like the hands are covering up the genitals conveniently, but if you lay flat and cover yourself with your hands, and then you just go limp, your hands separate because your elbows fall to the floor. That is not a natural position, and the one of the hands is grotesquely longer than the others, or the other, and it also doesn't fit historically. According to the practices of the time period, a dead body, the first thing that would have happened to it as they prepared it for burial before they wrapped it in any kind of shroud would have been to clean the body,
right? Clean
off all the blood. And then they would have applied all kinds of oils and things to it, and then they would have wrapped it in a few layers of a very thin fabric, and then they would have put a shroud over top of it. So it doesn't fit historically either. There are far too many problems with this for it to continue to be taken seriously, and some people have said, "Oh well, no one has ever been able to reproduce it." Also false.
Right?
This guy, Garlascelli, he was like, oh, I can do it. And showed that if you take, there was back in the 80s, one of the guys who was invited to be on the little team of shroud scientists, who was the pioneer of microscopic analysis, was like, oh, there's no blood anywhere on this shroud. This is all red ochre and vermilion and things like that. It's paint.
Yeah.
And it is deteriorated, and what's left is just the chemical etching on the fabric of this chemical sitting on it for centuries. But this other guy was like, oh, so let's just take some red ochre, some vermilion, and some other stuff, and we're going to lay a piece of fabric over top of a bas-relief showing this face, and I'm going to do kind of a rubbing with this ink. Okay. And then he stuck it in an oven for a little while to try to simulate centuries of wear and tear and everything, and then washed the paint off and showed that just having the paint on there baked to simulate that aging actually created an image on the fabric, that the paint was gone, but that chemical etching remained, and was like, this is how it was done.
I have a question. What blood type was the red ochre?
I'm trying to think of paint brands, and I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Sherwin-Williams.
Well,
negative. I referenced it earlier, but it does. I want to reiterate it. I don't know why. I got into a little bit of a, our friend of the show, David Burnett, posted on Facebook a thing about enough with the Shroud of Turin already. And somebody piped in and was like, because he's like, there's no evidence for it. And somebody's like, do you mean no evidence as in zero? Other than the fact it clearly displays the imprint of a man who suffered in a way consistent with the manner Jesus' death was described in the God. And I just thought, yeah, okay, that's what we see there. But Jesus is not the only person that could possibly have suffered in that way. Like,
yeah,
people need to be better about understanding what something is evidence for.
And if you were going to fake something like this, you would try to make it match the story that you're trying to make.
Yeah. If I'm a guy who's walking around with an artifact trying to tell people that they can have faith healings because of it, I'm going to try to make it look a lot like Jesus's shroud would look. I'm going to put holes in the hands. I'm going to put, crown of thorn blood on the head. And that's exactly what you would do.
And the I don't know if you've seen this as well, but there's been, in response to the, science has proven the authenticity of the shroud, somebody used AI to try to recreate what Jesus would have looked like based on the shroud. And it's white European Jesus.
Right.
From the medieval European arts world. And it's no coincidence that the Jesus on the shroud happens to match the depiction of Jesus, including the artistic styles that were in vogue during the time period that the shroud suddenly popped up on the scene. That's what we would expect. But as I am wont to say on my social media channels, learn to think critically and Google competently.
That's right.
And you can free yourself from the grips of these dogmas. And you'll learn an awful lot of cool stuff along the way, too.
I think that's a great place to close this out.
Yep.
A good final message. Get out there and critically think and Google and competently Google, everybody. And that'll be it for the show. If you would like to help make our show go, and in so doing, get yourself access to an early and ad-free version of every episode, as well as the potential, if you're at the right level, to get the extra bonus content every single week, you can go to patreon.com/dataoverdogma. If you want to reach us, it's contact@dataoverdogmapod.com. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye, everybody.
Data Over Dogma is a member of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. It is a production of Data Over Dogma Media, LLC, copyright 2024, all rights reserved.
Have you ever wondered what the science says about certain foods, products, or treatments? Does chiropractic actually work? Should I only buy organic foods? Are GMOs actually harmful? Is adrenal fatigue real?
We've got you covered. The goal of the Unbiased Science podcast is to dispel misinformation and misconceptions across an array of science and public health topics. We love to debunk myths and help arm our listeners with information so they can make evidence-based decisions. Make sure to tune in to the Unbiased Science podcast to get all of your questions answered.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome to Conflicted, a podcast that tells stories of the Islamic past and present to help you make sense of the world today. Hosted by me, Thomas Small, author and filmmaker, and my good friend Ayman Dean, an ex-Al-Qaeda jihadi turned MI6 spy. Conflicted is prepping its 5th season, which is coming to you very soon. And in the meantime, you can sign up to our Conflicted community. Subscribe to Conflicted wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, this is Matt from the Explorers Podcast. I want to invite you to join me on the voyages and journeys of the most famous explorers in the history of the world. These are the thrilling and captivating stories of Magellan, Shackleton, Lewis and Clark, and so many other famous and not so famous adventurers from throughout history. Go to explorerspodcast.com or just look us up on your podcast app. That's the Explorers Podcast.